Everyone, and welcome to Softvision Suite's monthly webinar. This is Megan Morse. I'm one of the customer success consultants here on our team. I just want to start off by thanking you all for taking the time to join us today. Our session and our topic of discussion is going to be surrounding our venture forecasting solution. So we'll be going into some of the best practices and key screens within the solution, as well as in making recommendations for how to best manage and adjust your demand during these unpredictable times. Okay. So an introduction here for anybody new to the webinar. This is our customer success team. We run these monthly webinars for you as our clients and are assigned to each of you to help support you on our system and spread system knowledge. If you ever have any questions or need further assistance with the software, please feel free to reach out to us directly. Just a reminder as we get started, everyone will be on mute to reduce any of the background noise. There will be a Q&A icon located in the bottom portion of your screen. You can use that to interact with us throughout the session, ask us questions or send comments, and we'll address them as we go. A recording of this webinar will be made available on our YouTube channel, which is at Cognizant Softvision YouTube. If you search there, you'll be able to see our previous sessions, and we'll also send you a follow-up email once this session is posted and the recording is available for you to view as well. And you can always access that on the support desk, fresh desk as well. Just thought I'd mention. All right, so our agenda for today, we will get started off here. I'll start us off with just highlighting some of the essentials of an automated forecasting solution and how Venture 21 addresses these needs. And then we'll get into more detail on the various methods and screens within the system, and then discuss some recommendations on how you can best manage your forecast in today's current climate due to the pandemic. Okay, so to begin with the essentials of automated forecasting. So now more than ever, we are all dealing with this constantly changing environment and world due to our current circumstances. So it's critical for you as retailers to efficiently and regularly manage your demand to best optimize your inventory. So having an automated forecasting system like Venture 21 is really key in providing you with the flexibility to make adjustments to your models and trends, as well as allow you to quickly access reports or exceptions so that you can make an adjustments, and overall just provide you with the time savings and efficiencies that are essential right now for streamlining your inventory long term, as well as just ensuring your overall success here during this time period. So we can move on to call out more just specifically to the Venture 21 solution. Venture 21 does offer a number of highly automated options to meet your demand planning needs and are primarily focused on helping our web-based and our wholesale clients. It utilizes statistical trends and various methods which can be defined across your hierarchy. So you have a lot of flexibility within the solution of defining these methods at the specific hierarchy level, whether that be at a total company level or drilling down to category, product, or even to your specific items. So a lot of flexibility there with that assignment. There's a lot of automation also built into it so that you as users have the ability to easily manage any high volume SKU counts, as well as easily introduce new items using our like item feature. One of the big benefits of the tool is that you are less likely to have any kind of user bias or influence because we are using this automated system. So once you have your methods and your settings appropriately defined, you're really going to just rely on that system automation to kick in and give you your recommendations and suggestions based off of the historical selling. And then after that, the process then goes into allowing the user to validate the forecast, and then that output is what is going to feed directly into our materials and our master scheduling module so that you can complete the inventory process and begin your purchasing process. So these will be the key features that we're going to go into a little more detail today. So with that, I will then hand it over to Linda to get us started off with introducing us to some of the key screens.
Thanks, Megan. And good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to start a little bit by talking about screen navigation once you're into Venture for people who may not be as familiar with it. So within Venture, we have 3 ribbons. There's a forecast ribbon, a Venture ribbon, and administration ribbon. The forecast ribbon is primarily the main ribbon that is used by most of the forecasting team or the inventory planning team. The Venture and administration ribbons are used primarily by your administrative or your merch ops users who are typically getting in, setting up Venture, managing some of those more operational functions within it. Today, we're going to focus primarily on the forecast ribbon. So, and with that, in your forecast, when you're looking, so next slide, Stuart. So when you're looking at your forecast ribbon, one of the items to call out is in your left-hand navigation, you have the ability that you always see your hierarchy when you're looking at the forecast graph, but you can collapse or expand that. Any of your subcats you can expand, but then also in the just to the left of the hierarchy, you will see a small 2 dashes line, and you can use that to contract the hierarchy so that you give yourself more screen space. So when you're working within product codes, you can, accommodate that extra space that you see it. There's also the capability of adding widgets. So based off of what you are doing within Venture, whether you're going to go in and work on SKU allocations or update forecast methods for new product codes, you can update the widgets for those steps that you're working on. Key idea is what can you do to minimize your screen, so you're looking at one screen, you're not having to scroll up or down and the data all stays below the fold. So by adding a widget, you just select the Add Widget button, you check the widget, and then you determine where do you want it to see in the Section 1 port column of your graph or to see it down in the Section 2 column of your graph. So in this case, we were looking at forecast graph, and the last time I looked at it, I wanted to see the history in the forecast graph. A few other screens that also use widgets would be the product link variance and DRS screens that we're going to look at. So, but when you add a widget, when you move to the next screen, you'll see that I added a widget to that screen. So, Stuart, thank you. So in this screen, I wanted to add the history, or excuse me, the SKU allocation widget so I can see that information. You can see I have that available and I put it in the bottom lower left corner.
So Linda, the setup we recommend though is the graph, history, and forecast method, right? In most users.
Those are the most common when you are forecasting.
Right, and the graph is important because you want to see the trends, like seasonal trends and history and how that forecast is, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So another screen where we use widgets and users are in is our product links variant screen. So this would be when you have set up your forecast, and if you are you have linked it to a hierarchy or another product code, and you've created an index within that link. So the index means I'm a brand new product and I'm going to sell like 1 or 2 times using that index time of the average forecast within that, of the average item within that hierarchy. So in the scenario I'm showing here, for this product code, we have an index of 2, meaning we were expecting this product to sell 2 times the average item within the hierarchy it's linked to. However, when I look at the link variance, I can see that it actually is only selling at 0.087 the most recent week. And when you look at the graph, you can see that there have been some challenges achieving what that original forecast was. So this is an example where the variance screen is recommending that you modify that index and bring it down to something more in line with what you're selling. And again, think through that in terms of, in these times of pandemic, availability is a big issue. So if people haven't been able to get the inventory to achieve that forecast, then maybe you wouldn't want to update this index. But that's what this screen does.
And the orange line is the link and the other line is the actual in this graph?
And I'm sorry, Stuart, I didn't put the index on it. So
Oh,
I
it's
believe
okay.
you are correct, yes.
I think the orange is, yeah. And there are options you could see in this graph, but basically
And any
you could
point
see
in
the
time, you can
difference.
look at the legend and it'll tell you what the various lines are and indicate items. So,
Right.
and moving on to the next screen within product allocation is product allocation hot list. So this identifies SKUs, new products that have been added, but where the SKU mix, or in Venture it's referred to as allocation, the product allocation needs to be set. So this product code you can see is basically just been flat across all the SKUs that are available. And so you would want to go in and assign an allocation to it and add it. And just as a reminder, Venture does offer the ability that you can go in and enter the information manually. You can use historic levels to set it. In this instance, it's a new code, so we wouldn't have historic. But you can also assign a template. So you can set templates up that typically identify how these SKUs would sell. And in that instance, if you're looking at templates, I recommend reaching out to your customer success team member and we can help you set them up. But then within product info, you can also set next review dates and other pieces as to when you would want to come back and look at this. And so within this screen, when you first open it, if a user has never opened it before, it will primarily open with just that allocation hot list. So I, as a user, went in and added the SKU allocation and product info, and Stuart's going to talk a little bit about how to do that as well in the demo. And our next screen where we get in, and you also have the ability with widgets, is dynamic reports. So within Venture, you have the capability that you can set up dynamic reports, and you can have those reports available that you can put on your screen as different widgets. So looking at forecast variance, depending on the type of product, you may want to pop between a couple of different weeks. And so you could have different versions of that report on your desktop. You could take a look at any of the performance related reports or status reports. So it's basically whatever you're trying to do that you can set those up. But widgets are a very user-friendly tool that we remind people of, and really use them to your best ability to try to save and improve your productivity within the dashboard. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Janine.
Thanks, Linda. All right, one of the things that we wanted to point out are the highlights with the different forecast methods that are available within Venture. So the first one I've got covered here is Expert. So this is the actual forecast method that is set as the default when you first implement Venture. So understanding what the different forecast methods do will drive you to where you want to either change the default, perhaps set defaults at different levels in the hierarchy. Those are certainly options that you have. And if you are interested in that, definitely talk with your CSC on how to accomplish that. So the Expert method is our statistical forecasting method. It will utilize and look at more than 20 different statistical models to determine what model to pick to create the forecast out into the planning horizon. We had up until just recently only forecasted out a future of 52 weeks. You now can forecast out a full 104 weeks now. The Expert method is one of the forecast methods that you can link. So Linda had mentioned this. So when you're bringing new product into Venture, you want to be able to link it to use as a historical basis. So most often you'll either link it to a very similar item, or if you don't have something that you feel matches real well, you can link it to the category or subcategory, which it will use that base to build the forecast go forward. And then at a point in time when it starts to accumulate its own demand, it will then switch to its own demand to create that future forecast. Expert is ideal for high volume products with at least 2 or more years of history. Okay. The next method is flat, which is simply what it sounds like. This allows you to give a flat valued forecast for the product This is ideal for low volume products or items that are sporadic. So where you don't necessarily want to go into a back order situation, you can key in a low value forecast, and you have the option to either tell the system a unit forecast for a period in time. So in my example here, I've asked the system to generate a 2-unit forecast every week. Your other option is you can have an average of recent history based on a certain number of weeks. So it's now showing in my new forecast line 2 units for every week that go out there. This is one method that you cannot link. All right.
And you use this, Janine, for real sporadic demand, right?
Yes.
No pattern.
Really
or
sporadic
anything.
demand.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Now, there is 2 or sometimes 3 types of thoughts around flat. So I've got a customer that relies on either flat as a forecast to kind of protect and make sure they have inventory in hand, or she'll use safety stock. There's also those customers that are that have suggested purchase order. They could use ROP for the same activity. So if you happen to be a venture and a suggested purchase order customer, you could take a look at which option might make more sense for your team.
And this integrates directly with master scheduling, and this link up here, actually, if you click on it, will take you into the materials planning screen.
Exactly. So and whenever you're changing, whenever you're changing any of your values in that forecast method, you can hit apply and it'll adjust the forecast graph to give you that view to see if you like it or it makes sense for you. And then if you want to move forward with it, you could then just hit save. If you decide, nope, that's not what I want, you can refresh it and it reverts back to whatever value was there previously. All right, the next 2 methods I've combined, we have what we call SALY. So it's known as same as last year and same as last year simple. So what SALY does is it uses last year's actual history to create the forecast. And this is ideal for those types of products that really kind of have their peaks and valleys in selling, or what we fondly all call seasonality. So oftentimes you'll want to use same as last year simple or same as last year because you want to be able to time the purchasing and the arrival of your inventory to match those peaks and valleys, versus if you were using expert method, it's at the end of the day or end of the planning horizon, I should say, it'll still get you to that same number, but the timing won't necessarily match the seasonality. So we do have a lot of customers that tend to feel more comfortable with this particular forecast method. With this method, you do have the option of an index, and that simply is saying with a 1.0, it's telling me match last year's match last year's actual sales evenly flat. And then if you want any kind of an increase, like in the little pop-up above, I've got an index of 2, which is saying, double what the units were. So you also, unfortunately, if you want to, you could do less than that, but there's that option for you. Now, the difference between the 2 methods is SALY, the SALY, will always use the linked history. So if you are linking, it's always going to use that for history. If you want the system to eventually take on the new product's own history, you then need to switch it to SALY Simple. And that disconnects that link, and then the product starts using its own history for forecasting. All right. 1 year seasonal. So this uses exponential smoothing, which is called a Winters method. I'm not by any stretch a statistics expert, but that is the method that it will use. This is also a method the system will use if expert method is the selected choice, but you have between 55 and less than 104 weeks of history, expert will defer to the 1-year seasonal method. You can link with this particular forecast method. You do have indexing with this as well. And this is, I would say, ideal use when it's definitely this previous past year that you want for history. I think you get the same benefit with SALY. So I think it's more of a personal preference. I would say most of our customers defer to the SALY method. And then last but not least, we do give you the ability to set multiple forecast methods. So there's a bit more steps that are involved here. And so if you are interested in looking at this, definitely talk to one of us and we can help you with that. But it's a unique situation if you know there's going to be some sort of change in the product's future activity. So you pick a standard default method that you have on the product. And at some point in the future, you decided that you believe you want to put a flat forecast of a low number because you aren't going to be able to sell the product, or you know the vendor won't be able to ship, they're on hiatus for a few months. So what you would do is you would pick that future date range that you want to use, select the forecast method, and you're not limited to any. So you could choose SALY, you could choose flat, you could choose 1-year seasonal if you choose to. And then go ahead and select that. So what it'll do is it'll use whatever your current method is up until that time frame that you've selected. The system will then switch to this new forecast method for the set time period that you've chosen. And then once that time period ends, it will revert back to its original default version. Default method. All right, so some of the activities that we have that have come into play quite a bit during this pandemic is, I think initially when it hit, there was an assumption or a belief that that everyone's business was going to take a hit. And I will say that businesses did do that, but in a shorter period of time than they expected, business started really improving and taking off. So one of the things that we worked with our venture customers is, okay, how can I, bring down my forecast so that I don't overbuy until I get a feel of what's going to happen. So we have what we call forecast adjustments. And this is one of the panes that's in that forecast ribbon that Linda mentioned. So what you do, and you can do this at product or SKU level, but I've selected a product here and I've come in and, I'm sorry, you can do it at any level in the hierarchy, but I've chosen this particular product. And with the level adjustment, I take a look at the time frame I want to impact. So I've chosen a sample of 6 weeks. So I've keyed in a negative value because I'm trying to pull down and hedge my bet to what I believe the units will be. So you can see where my base forecast is on the top line. I'm making my adjustments with the negative values. So my net value is now showing, and that is going to be what my forecast will be for that time period. I apply it so that I can see visually what it looks like on the graph. And then if I like it or I want to make changes, I can make further adjustments and then I can hit save. One of the things that we did stress with this, because it was such an unknown and we didn't know if we took an overall adjustment at the venture level, what that impact would be. And so it was critical to make sure that we relooked at this on a rather frequent basis, because a lot of the customers had seen softness in some areas, but in other areas they were starting to see immense growth. So taking that high level reduction could long-term be an issue. So that's why it's critical you take a look at how that's performing.
And this is an example of a product, but feedback we got from customers was it was either the whole business that was down or it was particular category or subcategory, which you could do. So when you go to the product level here, this would be a specific product adjustment, but the parent adjustments could be changes made at the category or subcategory.
Exactly.
Right.
I think yes, initially when the pandemic started, we were all looking at that top level for sure. And then as, March started completing and we were moving into April, we started seeing that not the entire business was down, but certain areas other areas were growing. So that's where you start drilling down to see, okay, you know what? I want to pull up these particular categories or subcategories.
Right. And conversely, yeah, there are certain subcategories or categories that did really well. So we had to go in and make those adjustments. Now, you could change the forecast method. Let's say you changed it to flat, 2 units every week or something. But that's not really good because you may not want to keep it the whole horizon. So here you might adjust it for a couple of weeks and then maybe do a slightly less adjustment, hopefully that the sales come back. But again, it's something you have to look at. So this is something that needs to be reviewed at least weekly, going in there.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Mm.
Absolutely right. So the next two options that I'm going to talk about are options that we have that we've always had. I think forecast adjustments weren't used on any sort of frequent basis until this pandemic. I think I had the conversation with every venture client about forecast adjustments. So we were really partnering with them. But this option has always been available and probably more commonly used across our venture clients. So we call them historical overrides within venture. For those that are our Forecast 21 customers, it's often what we would consider or classify unusual demand. So you can go into a time frame, again, whatever weeks make sense to you that you're seeing this activity. And the one thing you need to keep in mind with unusual demand or historical overrides is you truly sold those units, right? They've taken your inventory and you have to be able to replan that inventory. The benefit of doing it as a historical override is that you're going to take that spike out of the calculation for your future forecast because we think it's unusual and we don't anticipate it to repeat itself. If it's something that repeats itself, then it's not unusual, right? So we wouldn't want to do an override. So in this activity, again, it's an option on the forecast ribbon. You look at that time period that you want to adjust. And again, same sort of steps as the forecast adjustments in the sense that I'll go in and I will key in a weekly value that I think would pull the demand more in line to what I would have normally done without this unusual behavior. So I've keyed in values for a period of weeks and it then reflects on the graph so that I can see that, well, I think I really only would have sold, the 95 units, the 106, the 94 during that time period. One of the things that's just a reminder when you're doing historical overrides or you're doing what I'm going to go into next, which is events, one of the things that's great about venture is we have a lot of visual cues for the users. So if you're not seeing something that you've done, i.e. the historical override or an event, make sure you go into the options on that toolbar right there, and it pops up a grid that gives you lots of options as to what you want to appear on the graph itself. So you'll want to make sure that you've selected that and applied it so that you will see those visual cues. All right, events. So their events are pretty detailed and there's several activities that have to happen in order to create these events. So I will definitely recommend you talk to your CSC about those steps if you're not comfortable with them. But the events are a means for you to indicate a marketing activity that's going to happen, and you really want it not to impact the venture. So it's kind of an isolated marketing activity that's in addition to what your normal venture activity is. So if you are doing flash sales or flyers or package inserts and things like that, you can create them in their own little, well, we call them events, but they're kind of like their own little venture in a venture. And so what you do is you have a naming convention for these. You select the products that are going to be in these events, and you give them a potential forecast for that event. And then once you have had the event, you can compare what you thought that event would do versus how it actually did. Again, that's for analytics. Does it make sense to have carved that out as an event? Did we think it was a success as it should have been? You know, and getting whatever you can glean out of that. You can, in fact, go back and build historical events as well if you choose to do that. And if you find that you're doing let's say a Halloween event, you can simply copy that event for the next Halloween, make any adjustments if there's some products that are added or changed. And again, the visual cues, my image is extremely small. I thought it was bigger than that. Sorry about that. But we do a visual shading on the graph so that you can see when the event happened. And when you hover over it, it'll show you what the name is and you can click on it and it'll show you what products were in there. All of the events are on the master calendar, so you can see all these color-coded events that we've had and what their naming convention is. And if you were to click on these as well, it would also open up that event for you to view. If you happen to be in a product and you believe it was in an event, when you're in the product on the forecast graph, if you clicked event calendar, which is again on the ribbon right next to that master calendar, it would show the event down at the bottom of the screen for you. So like I said, we try to give you a lot of visual cues to show you what activity has been going on around all of these different products. And that's it. I'll turn it over to you, Stuart.
All right. Unfortunately, we're not going to have a live screen review because we do have some system issues. We are in the process of upgrading our sample dashboard to the next version. Which is why you heard me chiming in a little bit more in some of the slides, because I want to at least participate. So what I'm going to try to do, because it is important to see these on a screen, is outside of the webinar, I'll record a demo. And so I'll go through all the steps that I plan to go through and either combine it with this as an MP3, you know, one link in YouTube, or we'll have a part A and part B. So I apologize, I don't have that now. And hand that back to Megan.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Stuart. It looks like we haven't had any questions come through. So if you have any questions that come to mind now, you can just send them through in the Q&A window down below. Just to start talking though about next month's webinar, as Stuart mentioned, we are in the process of getting ready for our new upgrade. So the 2007 release. We'll be reviewing the different enhancements and features that will be included in that release next month, and that will be on September 3rd at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we'll send you out an invite beforehand so you can get registered for that event. All right, and looks like we haven't had any questions come through. So if you think of anything later, feel free to reach out to us, send us an email. And as we said, we'll follow up with a recording of this session, and Stuart will also include that live screen demonstration for you as well. So that might stem some questions later on. Oh, we did have something come through. What is the best practice for using the publish button? We had a question come through. Stuart, do you want to?
I would, but I need some feedback maybe from Linda or Janine on this. So you guys know what's the best practice for using the publish button? We might have to get back to you, Sarah, because
sorry, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Okay. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Right. So Sarah, the publish button unfortunately is not active yet. And what we are doing, it is in the product development, product backlog. What it will do is if you are changing your forecast method, you have adjusted any of the values in that forecast method area and you apply and save, the ideal situation would be you'd be able to publish that and have it immediately go to master scheduling. Whereas now, if you make any changes to that, it doesn't get pushed through to master scheduling until your reforecast process is run. And yours run weekly. You don't have the option, unfortunately, that they run daily. where some venture clients can, so if they made changes today, they'll see them tomorrow. So in your situation, because it only happens once a week, getting that publish button live for you would be ideal because you'd be able to see those changes immediately.
So would that require a MS run be done at this point?
No, it would be considered a live publish like it is in the Forecast 21 side.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the goal of what it's supposed to be.
So you don't have to wait overnight because you want to see the change right away?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Good
All
question.
right. Sarah says, thanks, Janine. So thank you, Janine.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. All right. Any more questions? I think we're good.
I think that's it. Yep.
All right.
All right. So thank you all for spending the time with us again here today. I hope you found this session helpful, and please enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Thank you.
Thanks all.
All right, this is Stuart. I'm in a sample dashboard. You can see here the module venture forecast. And primarily, you're going to go to forecast graph. That will open up a venture forecast here. And you'll be able to see at the hierarchy level, either all merchandise, category, subcategory, or particular product. So yeah, for this product, you can see here we have this widget, the forecast graph. You have the history, and then the forecast method. You could always go in and add a widget. If you want to add product info, you could add it to a particular column. So here you see, now we see the product info and the forecast method. If you want to, you could also just click and drag to move these widgets around. So now we have the history there, the forecast method. And if you want to close a widget, you could do it there. Okay, so here we could see, you see the graph itself. You could see that we have different methods that are chosen. You could see the expert method. It shows 1 year seasonal. It's saying there was less than 2 years of history. Or we could set it to the default method. Here you could see that we have the method set at the default level, and you see a blue circle here. This saying that a default method is set. And if we hit apply, we could go in and see, using that, it's going in and it's looking at the default method, and it's selecting either exponential smoothing or box Jenkins. So this gets into a lot of statistics. It'll pick the lower one, the lower mean absolute deviation. And you see this is fairly low. So this is a fairly good forecast. You can see that it's following the trends that you have here. I'm going to go into another product here. So I could click on that product. Here you could see that this is linked. So this product is linked to another product. And you'd use that when you're first starting out for a new item. You may want to link it. Here we linked it to this other product, 54044. And so it's going to take the linked history. If you want to unlink it, once you start to get sales, you could click here and you could apply. So in this case, we don't have, it's not linking, it's taking its own forecast method. And you see here, in this case, it's very low mean absolute deviation. So once you start getting sales, it'll go in there, look at the actual history, and then create a forecast that's here. The other thing you could look at is the product allocation hotlist. So in this case, this is going to show you items where there's not an allocation set. So you want to set that at the SKU level. So here you could see, there's ways of sorting this. Here I sorted by prior 4 weeks units. I want to look and see items that have a lot of units. So if I click on this particular one, I could then go in and take a look at the allocation. Here's where I could also add a widget. So if I want to, I could add SKU allocations. You could also just go to the SKU allocation section. So let's add this to the second section. So now I could see the SKU allocations that are here for this 22,350. So you see here that the allocation itself, and I'm going to scroll here, the allocation itself is only at this 20%, you see. So everything's set at 20%. We do have history on this, and we could, if we wanted to, apply a template. So here we could go in and we could add an allocation. You could also do that up here. So you could either assign history. So here we could add an allocation. We could either take it from historic, or we could apply a template, okay? And here you see that here's a template that we could apply and proceed with that allocation, okay? You could also look at apply suggested template up here, you see, but we already applied it. So it's basically saying, look at this template, and templates are set in the dashboard here with the SKU allocation template. So there's different ways of applying these templates. You would apply it and save it, and now you would be able to have this allocation. So going in here, if you go to this product allocation hot list, you may want to add the widget for SKU allocations, okay? And again, you could also just go to the SKU allocations here for this 22,350, and you see it would have this allocation. Okay, and there are all different templates that you have here. And this template, actually in this case, it's set for a particular vendor. So you could have a template by different sizes or colors, and you could have it for a particular vendor. So in this case, since the vendor match, it's going to assign the template. But basically, you go to the allocation hot list, you sort it by, you know, the prior week sales, because you want to go in there and start allocating. You may have some here allocated that really you don't have sales coming through, but you want to go in there and save it. And you can see here that I have this widget. This widget is going to always show under SKU allocations. Okay, now we could go to looking at the future. We could look at a particular forecast adjustment we may want to make. So I'm going to go in there and search. You could click here and search for this item. And I could go in here and start to make adjustments. So you could see here on the graph that I have sales. Let me go to the forecast graph. You'd be able to see it maybe a little bit better. So you can see here, we had sales here that were coming in fairly consistent with a pattern, and all of a sudden the sales dropped off. So you may have this situation where either the sales are going to drop off or the sales are going to increase, and you want to make these adjustments. So you see here that the system is not really looking at these adjustments right away. It may find a pattern later on. You could go in and maybe apply, and that may take care of these sales, but then it's still going to do it long term. So you really want to go to forecast adjustments. So here you could go in and you could say, well, I really don't want these sales here. And there's different level adjustments. There are parent adjustments. If adjustments were made, let's say at a category, you may have a particular category or a particular product. In most cases, if your sales are going down because of recent events with the pandemic, you may want to go in at a higher level. But I'll just show you here at this level. I could go in here and put a -7 here. Okay, and you could do this for a certain number of weeks. Now again, you may not want to do this going forward here. I don't know if you could do a copy and paste. I guess you could do a copy and paste here. That makes it a bit quicker. And then you could apply it. And so you would see the net here with taking away those sales and the net effect. okay? Here you could say actually it was, you may want to go to -10 and apply. So here you want your sales, there's your base forecast. Actually, you'd have to read these. I did this quickly. If you wanted to zero these out, you would go in, look at your base forecast, and then have your net effect is 0. So that's one way to make these adjustments.